and welcome. I'm Ijoma Onyato. Tonight, Senate asks executive to sue Zulu King at the ICC. Also demand recall of Nigeria's High Commissioner to South Africa. President Jacob Zuma to meet with Nigerians and other African immigrants in South Africa over the xenophobic attacks. Federal government insists May 29 remains official handover date from President Jonathan to President-elect General Muhammadu Buhari. And Italy declares war on human smugglers, seeks more robust action from EU to stop deaths in the Mediterranean.
And on Business News tonight, the Securities and Exchange Commission sets up a Market Master Plan Committee to ensure best practice at the local bourse.
And on sports news tonight, boardroom row among top officials of the National Sports Commission threatens Nigeria's participation at the International Table Tennis Federation World Championships in China.
Nigeria appears set to move beyond the realm of words to action in its reaction to the ongoing xenophobic attacks on Nigerians and other foreigners in South Africa. Well, this comes as the Senate has asked the executive to recall Nigeria's High Commissioner to that country on account of the attacks. During its plenary today, the lawmakers also demanded the recall of Nigeria's High Commissioner to South Africa. Our correspondent Linda Akigbe reports.
Pictures are as horrific as they are unnerving. People being set on fire by angry mobs, destruction of stores and businesses belonging to foreigners, all in South Africa. The attacks targeted mainly foreigners of African descent from Nigeria, Mozambique, Zimbabwe and other African countries. Some foreigners who were lucky enough to escape being killed had their shops vandalized or destroyed, losing huge amounts of money. Governments, regional bodies, organizations and individuals have condemned the xenophobic attacks in South Africa. But the Nigeria Senate is calling for stiffer measures to prevent a recurrence.
Have we talked about compensation to our people who have lost their businesses and their homes in Southern Africa? Is there anything that we have done about the king of the Zulu king who actually instigated this?
My humble suggestion would be that South Africa should not stretch us beyond our elastic limit on this matter, because there is a limit beyond which the nation will not accept what is happening in South Africa.
A federal lawmaker, Senator Itai Enang, says the recent xenophobic attacks is a setback for the goal of integration, especially in South Africa, which has investments in different countries in Africa.
Nigeria should learn to take reciprocal, painful action against South Africa. South Africa is part of the country that has collapsed the economy and sabotaged the economy of Nigeria. Because what we are paying to MTN and MultiChoice or DSTV is so monumental, and it is affecting the economy of Nigeria. For the MultiChoice, you have to pay 16,000 naira per month, whether you watch the channel or not. And the government of Nigeria has tried to ensure that what happens in other countries of the world, that you only subscribe to select channels, that any channel you don't watch, you don't pay.
The Senate in its recommendations asked the executive to recall Nigeria's High Commissioner to South Africa. The Senate also asked the executive to file a suit in the International Criminal Court against the Zulu king, Goodwill Zwelithini, whose comments set off the string of xenophobic attacks in South Africa. Linda Akibi, Channels Television News.
And while the Senate is asking for the recall of Nigeria's envoy from South Africa, their counterparts in the House of Representatives want adequate compensation for Nigerian victims of the xenophobic attacks. The chairman of the House Committee on Diaspora, Abike Dabiri Erewa, made the call while meeting with the South African High Commissioner to Nigeria, Louise Mguni, in Abuja today. But the High Commissioner said the issue of compensation is not a priority at the moment, as his country is currently concentrating on saving lives and stabilizing the situation. Our correspondent Langri Lasisi reports.
The world is still coming to terms with the xenophobic attacks in South Africa. Nigeria, like other African nations, is concentrating on how the crisis is affecting its citizens. This was the focus of the meeting when the House of Representatives Committee on Diaspora met with the South African High Commissioner in Abuja. The committee chairman said the House of Representatives is seeking an end to the attacks on immigrants and compensation for the survivors.
But we also want to stress that it is important that Nigerians in South Africa be protected and Africans in South Africa be protected, and that we hope that further killings will not happen. And moreover, we also demand on behalf of Nigerians in South Africa that those that have been disturbed, vandalized, lost their properties, I hope you're thinking of compensating them. Those that have died, lives cannot come back. But we hope that those that have lost their properties will be compensated.
The South African envoy apologized for the developments in his country, even as he acknowledged the contribution of African countries to the development of South Africa.
But I would, of course, agree with you that I think we're not strong enough on the issue of educating our people. You must know that there are a lot of our people who were born after 1990 or just before the decade of the 90s who did not know as to how we came to be where we are and the role that was played by frontless states, which of course included Nigeria in the struggle against apartheid.
He, however, said the issue of compensation is one that may be considered later.
We want to say that now, at the moment, our focus is more on saving lives, on normalizing the situation. And then other things, as to how things are addressed, that solution will not come from us as South Africans. We have to sit with the affected people and their leaders and all their diplomatic representatives and develop a mechanism of addressing whatever has happened.
He assured the committee that the South African government is taking steps to address the situation and care for some of the victims of the crisis. Lanre Lasese, Channels Television News.
Well, Nigeria has officially complained to South Africa about these attacks and has asked Pretoria to punish the culprits and compensate the victims, even though the South African government has said that the safety of the immigrants is their priority for now. The Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Musiliu Abanikuru, has summoned South Africa's High Commissioner to register Nigeria's protest over the ongoing attacks. Ambassador Abanikuru condemned the attacks on foreigners in South Africa, expressing concern over the fate of Nigerians and other nationals who are migrants. He adds that South Africa needs to take concrete steps to quell the unrest and bring the culprits to book. Soldiers were deployed overnight to tackle gangs hunting down and killing foreigners after at least 7 people died in the violence in the last few weeks. In the meantime, South Africa has closed its consulate in Nigeria following anti-xenophobia protests. Protests were held outside the consulate and at the South African High Commission in Abuja. The South African Consul General in Nigeria, Sam Monesa, said in an email to the South African Business Forum in that country that the closure would remain in force until tomorrow. The situation in Durban has calmed down, but Mr. Monesa says that he is concerned about the Nigerians that are being repatriated. He warns the forum's members to stay alert and not move around unnecessarily. Meanwhile, Zimbabwe is repatriating up to 2,000 of its citizens who have asked to be evacuated in the wake of the attacks. The first 6 buses carrying 407 Zimbabweans left Durban on Sunday. In the meantime, South African authorities have arrested 11 men in Johannesburg suspected of involvement in violence against immigrants. The men were held during a joint raid by the police and the army on the Johannesburg hostel. A wave of anti-immigrant violence has also so far claimed 7 lives in trouble spots in Durban and in Johannesburg, the same area where the government announced deployment of defense forces, and that was yesterday. Still staying with putting the situation under control, the South African President Jacob Zuma has arranged a meeting with Nigerians and other African immigrants resident in the country. That meeting is also expected to include nationals from Pakistan and Bangladesh. A statement issued by the South African presidency says that President Zuma will have an audience with the nationals affected by the attacks in the country at the presidential guest house in Pretoria. The statement says that the meeting is part of building lasting partnerships with stakeholders in the country to ensure that shameful attacks on foreign nationals do not continue. And in part two, after the break, newly appointed Acting Inspector General of Police vows to prosecute electoral offenders. That's in a moment. Do join us again.